On September 30th, 2025, SAG released a statement regarding their position on AI synthetic performer Tilly Norwood, who's right now taking headlines by storm. In their statement, SAG said they believe creativity should remain human-centered and that they are opposed to the replacement of humans by synthetics or synthetic performers. What a relief, a well-worded statement that says SAG's got your back. But what do the contracts say? In this episode, I'm going to be breaking down SAG's statement up against their own contracts, what's going on in the film industry in regards to synthetic performers, defining synthetic performers, and letting you know what SAG is doing right and what I believe as a member SAG can improve on. And most importantly, how you can make a difference. Before we get started, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Mariah. I'm a professional award-winning filmmaker, and I am also the owner of independent movie studio New Royalty Films. I decided that I wanted to make this podcast because our industry is changing so much. We all know that, we see it. But rarely do we get the full, transparent breakdown of what's actually going on from a business legal perspective. As much as film is about art, it is also equally about business, and I just want to see more people educated and informed. I love filmmaking with my whole heart. I don't want to see it go away, and I think if more people know what's going on, our industry as a whole is going to thrive. That said, please subscribe so that I can continue to make these videos and do all of the research so that you don't have to, but you can still stay informed. Okay, that was a mouthful. Before we get into SAG's statement, it's important that we define these terms so that you fully understand what is being said. By definition, a synthetic performer is an AI-generated character that is not based on a real person. Now, I know what you're gonna say. Mariah, all AI is based off of work that already exists. I know, and I agree with you. But right now, the definition surrounding AI, what's copywritten, what isn't, what's allowed, what isn't, is extremely gray. It's kind of like the Wild West. There's a lot that still has to be discussed and regulated. So I know it's upsetting, but this is what the definition is. A digital replica is an AI-generated character that is based on a real person, and it requires that person's permission to use their likeness. You might be sitting there thinking that synthetic performer as a word itself is a contradiction, and you're right, it is. Synthetic is fake and performer is a person, a real human person. So why does SAG even have this term? Why does SAG have protections for fake performers? And we're going to get into the why, but the short answer is by having this term synthetic performer, SAG is able to have some legal jurisdiction about the use of them. So while on the surface it seems like a negative, it is actually a positive that at least this word is being defined. Now that we have a better understanding of synthetic performers versus digital replicas, let's get into SAG's actual statement line by line to see what they're saying up against their contracts. First page, SAG-AFTRA's statement on synthetic performer. SAG-AFTRA has released the following statement on the announcement of Tilly Norwood, an AI-generated actor, in quotes, that is reportedly seeking representation. SAG-AFTRA believes creativity is and should remain human-centered. The union is opposed to the replacement of human performers by synthetics. As I continue to break this down, this is where semantics is going to become very important. Because in this statement, SAG is saying the union is opposed to the replacement of human performers. And that opinion might be true, but their contracts say otherwise as to what is allowed. As we go on to page 2, I want to make it abundantly clear, this is not me condemning SAG-AFTRA, but this is me demanding transparency about what is going on in our industry from a legal business perspective, because statements like this do not hold up in court the same way contracts do. Contracts have more importance. Page 2 is where it really gets good. To be clear, Tilly Norwood is not an actor. It's a character generated by a computer program that was trained on the work of countless professional performers without permission or compensation. It has no life experience to draw from, no emotion, and from what we've seen, audiences aren't interested in watching computer-generated content untethered from the human experience. It doesn't solve any problem. It creates the problem of using stolen performances to put actors out of work, jeopardizing performer livelihood and devaluing human artistry. Wow, that is a lot to unpack, and this is where words really matter. First point. To be clear, Tilly Norwood is not an actor. It's a character generated by a computer program that was trained on the work of countless professionals and performers without permission or compensation. Now, the creator of Tilly Norwood seems to believe otherwise. She believes Tilly Norwood is an actress, and this is her statement on it. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. It's a Dutch name. Aline van der Velden, who is the Dutch founder of AI outfit Particle 6 Productions, she also created Tilly Norwood, released a statement saying, and I quote, "To those who have expressed anger over the creation of my AI character, Tilly Norwood, she is not a replacement for a human being, but a creative work, a piece of art. Like many forms of art before her, she sparks conversation, and that in itself shows the power of creativity. I see AI not as a replacement for people, but as a new tool, a new paintbrush," she continued. "Just as animation, puppetry, or CGI opened fresh possibilities without taking away from live action. AI offers another way to imagine and build stories. I'm an actor myself. And nothing, certainly not an AI character, can take away the craft or joy of human performance. Creating Tilly has been, for me, an act of imagination and craftsmanship, not unlike drawing a character, writing a role, or shaping a performance." And the statement goes on, you can read it yourself, but this is a very human response. According to the creator of Tilly Norwood, she worked hard to make this character. It's an expression of her artistry. And SAG in their contract has allowed for this kind of artistry. So I find their statement interesting because according to the creator of Tilly Norwood, this does represent her human experience. She's also an actor. I would love to know if she's a part of any unions. The reason why I'm bringing up the perspective of the woman who designed Tilly is because it seems like in her statement, she has the same values as SAG. I think if SAG actually had a conversation with her, they would agree on a lot of things. So that's why I find this statement so bizarre, because the woman who created Tilly didn't break any rules. Legally, she's allowed to create a synthetic performer. And SAG actually says it's okay as long as you follow all of our paperwork and all of our guidelines. Now let's continue. From what we've seen, audiences aren't interested in watching computer-generated content untethered from the human experience. I find this sentence in their statement very misleading. From what I've looked at, I couldn't see any sources to back up what they've seen. But from what my sources are saying, let's read some of the actual statistics. So, audience interest in AI-generated content. Overall, the consensus is that it's mixed and this landscape is very complex. A majority of consumers see AI as the future. A minority are excited about it, but most people acknowledge that this is where our world, the industry, everything is headed. Continuing on, people overwhelmingly seem to believe that experimentation is good. They believe that disclosure is key, transparency is key. Human oversight is essential. And they want to focus on quality and authenticity. So it's interesting because right now we have a human person that has created a synthetic performer, a synthetic actress, that is very passionate about this, that claims it is their tool to explain their human experience and to express themselves. And so the question becomes, as this becomes more normal, which it will because it's legally allowed, what then will the general consensus be? Well, we just don't know yet. And I want to pause here for a second and point out that AI-generated commercials produce millions of views. So I think it's ignorant to say that there isn't an audience for this, because clearly there is. And I think it's just important that we are all honest with each other and acknowledge that these stats do exist so that we can bring this industry into a place that we're hopefully all happy with. This next part of the statement is a tough one. It doesn't solve any problem. It creates the problem of using stolen performances to put actors out of work, jeopardizing performer livelihood and devaluing human artistry. That part of the statement is really hard for me. Really, really hard for me. It is October 3rd, 2025. Since 2021, and I'm going to be reading because, again, I'm giving you statistics and I just want to make sure that I'm not misquoting. Here's the first one. Variety, April 3rd, 2025, a reporter by the name of Jazz Tangke, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, released an article talking about LA sound stages declining to a new low of 63% in 2024 with no signs of improvement. No signs of improvement. Film LA's soundstage production report worked with 17 studios in the greater Los Angeles area to source the data. The report includes detailed soundstage occupancy and stage and backlot filming data for all of 2023. We're in 2025. All of 2023, new soundstage occupancy data for all of 2024, and a comparison of available stage space in greater Los Angeles and major competing markets in 2025 and 5 years earlier. Let's continue. Over the last year and a half, local film and TV production in the state has been on a steady decline. Tilly Norwood was just announced, and it has been on a steady decline since 2021. In January, Film LA reported how permit applications had plummeted due to the LA fires, fair, but the city remained open for business. And sure, in regards to the fires, of course, we can say definitively that that affected filming. But again, that was January of 2025. Our industry in Los Angeles has been in decline since 2021. I'm going to continue on to the contributing factors. Reduced television production. From 2021 to 2024, TV production dropped by over 58% from its peak. That's a big number. But this is the biggest one. And this is where I want transparency from all unions. The WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes in 2023 significantly affected production levels. Significantly. And I personally believe that neither of those unions have really taken accountability for what those strikes did. I think blaming AI for all of this is sloppy and inaccurate. Actors have been struggling, according to the data, since 2021. I don't want this episode to be about the strikes. That really should be a different episode because there is a lot of information regarding those two strikes. But I do think that it's just important to mention because of this line. It creates the problem of using stolen performances to put actors out of work. I argue that there are more important contributing factors that need to be addressed and talked about that is the main reason why actors are struggling right now. I do not think it's fair to put everything on AI. AI is simply too new. We don't have the data. We don't really know. I want to stop seeing rhetoric that is solely blaming AI for the crash in our industry. We need to acknowledge that the studios broke our systems and they need to be fixed. All of our revenue models have been disrupted. Streaming services effectively made digital cable so that they don't have to report like we had to with the Nielsen ratings. These are very big, real problems that we need to be talking about more. We need to be incentivizing people to go back to the movies. No more of this theatrical 2-week release and then it goes directly to streamers or it goes to streamers at the same time as theaters. What are we doing? We have to talk about the revenue models and we have to stop solely blaming AI. It is just too new. Like I said, the data has been showing that there has been a decline since 2021. That's why I believe discourse like this is important. I get fired up about this because I really care and I just really think that it's important that we all know what's going on and we talk and treat each other like adults who can understand these topics. Last page. Additionally, signatory producers should be aware that they may not use synthetic performers without complying with our contractual obligations, which require notice and bargaining whenever a synthetic performer is going to be used. Whew. I hope by now you can see why my initial reaction to this statement was frustration. SAG is telling you, We condemn synthetic performers. We don't believe Tilly's a real actor. We think that everything should be about the human experience and you. But on the last page, they're telling you it's actually contractually allowed, as long as you follow our steps and as long as you follow our rules. So now that we all understand this statement in itself is full of pandering and contradictions that are meant to make you feel better, but don't really explain what's going on in a way that you can understand. So we're going to take a deep breath and get into exactly what these contracts say regarding synthetic performers. All right, let's break it down. I am going to include the links to these contracts in my bio so that you can read them for yourself, but I will paraphrase and summarize so that you have the highlights, the gist of what's going on. To be abundantly clear, SAG's statement says that they oppose synthetic performers, but synthetic performers contractually are allowed to be used. When a company wants to use a synthetic performer, they will have to provide notice to the union and an opportunity to bargain. So that means that the producer basically has to give them their reasoning why they are using this character. I've never done this before for a synthetic performer, but I have Taft-Hartley'd actors before. So for example, in 2019, I worked on a movie called North Hollywood, and we had to Taft-Hartley a lot of non-union actors because the movie was about skateboarding, and these actors were actually professional skateboarders. So when we were bargaining with the union to allow these non-union actors to be in our production, our reason was this is a skateboarding movie and we would like to use real professional skateboarders. And so they were approved. I would imagine the process for synthetic performers is very similar. When can synthetic performers be used by companies in place of a performer? As long as it is a wholly new creation and the producer bargains, providing notice to the union, it can replace a human. Now, SAG also has in their 2025 commercial contract that a synthetic performer, if it is used in a commercial with a actual human performer, you do have to pay more money, so there is a premium. So that is the incentive to use humans versus AI. But I would argue that the cost to use a AI actor versus a human actor is probably a quite significant savings. So how much does this premium really hit these companies? I don't know. I don't have the data. Overall, the most important takeaway of going through these brief bullet points regarding these contracts is that yes, synthetic performers can be denied or limited when they infringe on a human performer's rights or when the contract rules aren't followed. However, as long as the contract rules are followed and these AI generated performers, artists, producers who are, putting them up for approval are doing their due diligence and making a compelling case, well, it's technically allowed. And SAG says it's okay. Point being is producers can check the boxes, pay the fees, and still replace humans with AI. And that's why it's really important to not mistake statements for protection, because at the end of the day, it's what's in the contracts that actually matters. So why? Why can't we just ban synthetic performers? Why do they have to have rights? Why do we have to even go through any of this? If our statement says that we are against it, but our contracts allow it, what is going on? This is where things get a little bit complicated, and I'm going to do my best to explain it in the most simple terms possible. First and foremost, the harsh reality that we all have to accept is synthetic performers exist, whether we like it or not. And this goes back to what I said in the opening, that by SAG defining synthetic performers and putting them in a contract, we do have more rights for regulation than we would otherwise. And that's why this is a good thing. And SAG is not the sole villain in all of this. I don't think SAG is a villain. I just think that there are things that we could do better. By allowing synthetic performers to have rights and to have protections, SAG is actually able to do more than they would be able to do otherwise if these protections just didn't exist. Now, Could SAG demand a ban? Yes, of course SAG could. However, because of the collective bargaining structure of the union, employers would have to agree. And we all know studios are not going to agree to the banning of AI-generated content. They aren't. We know that. It's just the way that it is. We don't live in a utopia where we get what we want. But again, being educated and informed is how we can make a difference. I believe SAG never tried to ban AI outright because it is a little bit impractical right now with the way AI is being regulated and the laws that are happening in our country regarding AI. So to explain further, under US labor law, NLRA, unions must bargain in good faith. And so if SAG proposed a ban that employers considered non-negotiable, the employers could accuse SAG of basically refusing to be realistic, which I imagine is what happened during the strikes. Again, to have the verbiage in the contract does give us more rights for regulation. A ban outright could violate labor laws, so it's not realistic. And synthetic performers already exist. So we might as well at least do our due diligence and our best to regulate the use of them so that human performers can be the majority. Again, I do want to say that I have very strict criticisms of the industry's response to the strikes and the impacts that the strikes had on the industry, but that is a conversation for another day. Okay, so now what? We understand what synthetic performers are. We understand what digital replicas are. We understand that SAG has their own feelings regarding AI, but their contracts state otherwise. We understand the reality of these contracts and that they have to exist so that we have some leverage. So what do we do? Where do we go from here? It's important to know that SAG is a massive organization. It has over 150,000 members. And SAG does have a government affairs and public policy department in Washington, D.C. SAG has its own political action committee. It's called the SAG-AFTRA PAC. It funds and lobbies legislation to Congress. And by the way, IATSE has one as well. These unions have an immense amount of power to make a difference. What SAG is currently doing right in regards to legislation and bills that they're proposing is the No Fakes Act, is the Deep Fakes Accountability Act, the No AI Fraud Act. On state and local levels, you have the Elvis Act, the California AB 4112 Copyright Transparency Act, the California AB 2602, New Jersey Deepfake Criminal Law, and the Take It Down Act. Okay, Mariah, you just said a lot of words. What do all of these acts have to do with? Well, this is where I think SAG can do better. A lot of these acts, as the name implies, are dealing with copyright and deepfake. Because I love definitions, let's define deepfake in case you don't know what it is. So deepfake, as defined, is a video, image, etc., in which a person's face, body, or voice has been digitally altered so that they appear to be someone else, typically used maliciously or to spread false information. While I agree that legislation protecting people from deepfake is very important, my only criticism is that kind of only benefits people in the 1%. People like Tom Cruise or Taylor Swift, who are being deep-faked and put in inappropriate videos or images. That's not to say it does not happen to the regular citizen, but it seems like they're really protecting a specific group of people. As it stands right now, October 3rd, 2025, I could not find a bill or a piece of legislation being proposed specifically around synthetic performers. I would like to see that, and I have an idea of what a synthetic performer law could cover. I think certain parameters in that law could be transparency and discourse, requiring that ads, films, whatever it is, disclose it clearly that it's AI. I think you could use it to ban synthetic performers from being used in roles that a human could do. Point being, if a human can do it, you can't use a synthetic performer. It's banned. That's the law. Another aspect of this legislation could be tax incentives tied to human labor. withhold film and TV tax credits if you use synthetic performers. It could have limits on advertising, prohibiting certain synthetic performers from specific ads like healthcare or sports. And again, requiring transparent labeling of when these synthetic performers are used. And another aspect could be outlawing synthetic performers that resemble real people. We've seen it online, we've seen it on TikTok, we've seen it on social media. Actors who are saying, Tilly kind of looks like me. That freaks me out. That should not be allowed. That should be illegal. The reality check is this. SAG right now, in terms of legislation, in terms of bills, in terms of importance, is focusing on deepfake. And that's an important issue. I'm not making light of that. It is. But we need to be focusing on synthetic performers and the laws that need to be lobbied for, to be put in place to protect human, real actors, performers, crew members, whatever it is, from synthetic creations taking our jobs. And this is something that can be done, and it is something that should be done. So my call to action is this: just like the unions band together to get Jimmy Kimmel back on the air, I want to see the unions band together to propose legislation that protects its members from synthetic performers and synthetic crew. And I believe in our unions, and I believe that they have the ability to do the right thing. They just need to hear from us. Which, to be transparent, is a little difficult right now because SAG has their comments turned off, and I really wish SAG would turn them on. I understand that they want them off because of voting or something to that effect, but comments is how we communicate with our union. So you need to turn the comments back on. You need to let us speak up. You need to let us talk to you. Even if it's hard, even if it's difficult, even if you don't want to read it, it's your responsibility to allow us to be able to communicate with you on social media. In my bio, I'm going to include contact information so that you can communicate with the unions and have your voice be heard. Let them know we want real change and real protections put into place. I want to close with key expiration and negotiation dates. The 2025 commercial contract is already in place. This was renegotiated on April 1st, and that has a 3-year term. So we will not be able to revisit that until 2028. However, TV, theatrical, and streaming expires June 30th, 2026. So that means we still have time to advocate for the terms that we think are fair and appropriate that will define the trajectory of our industry moving forward. So that's why we're having these conversations now. So buckle up, everybody, because I'm going to be staying on top of all of the statements, all of the headlines, all of the news that's coming out to make sure that we all know what's going on so that our voices can be heard and we can see film flourish again. If you have any questions or topics that you would like me to unpack for future episodes, send me an email at mariahsfilmguide@gmail.com. I will go through them and I will get back to you. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. I know this was a long episode. I know this was an introductory episode, but I'm very, very excited to be starting this journey with you. I hope you come along for the ride, and let's see what we can do.